Ice meant to break her only proved her strength. It was supposed to be a shock, a jolt, a moment that cracked her focus and exposed something human and uncertain beneath the surface. The officers who carried that bucket believed the cold would do what pressure sometimes does to people. It can steal breath. It can shake confidence. It can make even the toughest mind slip for half a second. But when the bucket tipped and the ice water slammed down on her shoulders, something different happened. The moment that should have rattled her became the moment that defined her. Instead of recoiling, instead of gasping, instead of blinking hard against the sting, she held steady. Her body absorbed the hit. Her mind stayed locked. Her posture did not shift. And in that stillness, the real story began to take shape. Cold like that is not just a sensation. It is a test of instinct. Most people tense up. They guard their face. They shake out their hands. Their breath speeds up because survival mode kicks in fast. She had trained for that response, drilled past it until her instincts shifted into something sharper. The cold rolled over her skin, but it never reached her center. That inner core had been built through years of uncomfortable mornings, long nights, and physical battles meant to reset the limits most people accept as fixed. She knew cold. She knew pain. She knew the trick the mind plays when the body wants to quit. So when the officers thought they were testing her, they were really confirming what she already knew about herself. The way she stood there mattered. Strength is easy to fake in speeches, in stories, in brief flashes when no one pushes back. But strength under stress is honest. It cannot be faked because the body betrays every doubt. The officers expected to read doubt on her face, in her shoulders, or in a shift of weight that said she was trying to control the shock. Instead, they found nothing to read. Her steadiness pushed the moment into a different territory. It was no longer about the water or the stunt. It was about what it revealed. She had walked into the situation ready to be challenged. What the officers did not realize was that she had walked in even more ready to stay unshaken. As the water dripped from her clothes and pooled at her feet, the officers were still waiting for some visible reaction. A shiver, a sharp breath, a small break in that calm. They waited because they had built an image of how a person should respond. When that image didn't appear, the silence around her shifted. No words were needed. Sometimes strength speaks loudest when nothing is said. Their test had backfired, not in a humiliating way, but in a humbling way. They had tried to expose a weakness. Instead, they exposed the gap between what they assumed and what she truly was. For her, the moment was not dramatic. It was routine. She had been soaked, frozen, exhausted, and pushed to edges most people never reach. This was simply another layer on top of years spent learning how to stay composed when everything around her tried to break that composure. The cold did not define her. The discipline she brought into the cold did. That discipline had been built piece by piece through repetition, through choosing the harder path, through refusing to collapse when every part of her body had begged for rest during training. The officers saw only a sudden hit of ice water. She saw another chance to practice stillness under stress. The difference between her reaction and the one they expected came from the understanding that pain does not always have to control behavior. She respected the cold, but she did not fear it. That attitude separated her from people who treat discomfort as something to escape. She treated it as information. The cold told her she was alive, alert, and capable of handling more than most people would guess by looking at her. It told her the training had worked. It reminded her of winter swims, of nighttime drills, of instructors yelling through the dark while the ocean threw its worst at her. Ice water from a bucket was nothing compared to that. It barely registered as a challenge. Her strength did not show up as defiance or bravado. It showed up as control. The ice water hit. The moment unfolded, and she owned it without raising her voice or making a statement. Everyone watching understood something all at once. They were looking at someone whose limits sat far beyond where they assumed. The cold had come for her, and it failed to find anything it could take. Calm under pressure is a trained choice, not luck. Most people think calm belongs to those who were simply born with steady nerves, as if certain personalities come with built-in resistance to fear or stress. But she knew better. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a skill that gets shaped every time you stand in a moment you would rather run from. She had learned that early, when the path she chose forced her into situations designed to shake even the strongest people. The pressure was intentional. The discomfort was the point. Each time she felt her heartbeat spike or her chest tighten, she learned to slow her breathing, clear her thoughts, and act with purpose instead of panic. It did not happen overnight. It grew through repetition until calm became her default response instead of a lucky accident. Training rewired her reactions. In the beginning, she had felt the same fear everyone feels. No one walks into freezing waves at dawn with a smile. No one starts their first high-stress drill without nerves. But she walked in anyway, and when her instincts screamed at her to pull back, she forced herself to stay in the moment. That decision created a pattern. The more she stayed, the more she realized pressure loses power when you stop trying to escape it. By the time she reached the toughest parts of her training, she had built a mental switch that kept her steady even when her body was pushed to limits that used to feel impossible. That switch mattered because pressure creates noise. It fills the mind with what if, and I cannot, and this is too much. People crack not because they are weak, but because they listen to the noise longer than their training. She learned to strip that noise away. The fastest way to lose control is to focus on the fear itself. The fastest way to stay calm is to focus on the next action, the next breath, the next step. That simple shift became her anchor. It kept her moving in moments where standing still would have swallowed her whole. She also understood that calm does not mean emotionless. It means disciplined. Emotion can flood the mind in seconds. A sudden crisis, a harsh command, a shock of cold, a mistake that spirals. She felt all of it, but she did not let any of it dictate her decisions. That separation takes practice. It takes failing, resetting, and trying again. She had days when her nerves won, when frustration broke through, when she lost her focus. Those days did not weaken her. They taught her where the cracks were so she could reinforce them. Steady under pressure does not come from perfection. It comes from repairing yourself every time something shakes you. People around her often chalked her calm up to natural toughness, but natural toughness fades when pressure keeps rising. What lasts is trained awareness. She learned how her body reacts under stress. She learned how quickly her breath changes when adrenaline hits. She learned how her thoughts scatter when she feels rushed. Knowing those patterns gave her control over them. Instead of being blindsided by panic, she recognized it, named it, and narrowed her focus until the wave passed. Most people never study their reactions long enough to understand them. She made it part of her routine. Pressure also exposes habits. When things go wrong, people fall back on whatever they have practiced. If someone practices avoidance, they hide. If they practice anger, they lash out. If they practice doubt, they freeze. She practiced steady action. That is why she looked unshaken in moments that would have sent others spiraling. Her calm was not magic. It was muscle memory built through hundreds of decisions where she chose clarity over chaos. There were times when the pressure felt suffocating. Long nights with no rest. Loud orders in the dark. Endless drills that blended together until they felt like one long test. She wanted to stop more than once, but she learned that quitting is also a practiced response. If she quit once, it would become something her mind reached for whenever things got rough. So she refused. She stayed. And each time she stayed, she taught her mind that pressure was something she could navigate instead of something she should fear. Her calm became a kind of quiet strength. Not the kind that needs to be announced. The kind that stays level when chaos hits the room. The kind that keeps breathing steady when everyone else holds theirs. The kind that listens before reacting. She carried that calm into every challenge. Not because luck protected her, but because discipline shaped her into someone who could face pressure without losing who she was. Calm under pressure is not a gift. It is a choice made again and again in moments that test everything you think you can handle. She made that choice every time the world around her tried to pull her off balance. And the more she chose it, the stronger it became. Seal grit shows before the mission starts. It shows in the quiet work no one sees, in the hours when the world is sleeping and she is already pushing herself towards something harder than yesterday. People often imagine grit as a loud quality, something that appears in big dramatic moments. But hers built long before any mission, long before any test with an audience. It started in small decisions that stacked on top of each other until quitting stopped being an option. She understood that grit is not born in chaos. It is built in preparation, in repetition, in the grind that strips away excuses and leaves you with the truth of who you are when no one is watching. Before she ever stepped into the water, ran the drills, or faced the instructors, she trained herself to show up, even on days when her motivation was nowhere to be found. That consistency became her backbone. The foundation of SEAL grit is not the ability to endure the hardest moment, but the discipline to face the dull, relentless ones. Early mornings, sore muscles, slow progress, and constant discomfort. Those are the places grit lives. She treated every one of those days as a promise to the version of herself she was building. While others waited for inspiration, she built momentum out of discipline. There is a specific kind of toughness that grows from choosing the harder path before anyone asks you to. She took on extra weight, extra distance, extra challenges because she understood that comfort is a liar. Comfort tells you you're ready long before you are. Pressure tells you the truth. So she created her own pressure. She pushed herself into situations that tested her nerve. Cold water swims, long runs without rest, strength workouts stacked after endurance drills. By the time the real tests arrived, she had already lived through 100 smaller ones. Each one sharpened her until hesitation faded and confidence grew from evidence instead of hope. People often assume grit appears when danger does, but real grit is built in silence. It is built while tying laces in the dark. It is built while forcing yourself to finish one more rep after your arms shake. It is built in the decision to stay when your legs feel like they cannot take another step. She learned early that if she waited for the mission to reveal her strength, she would be too late. Strength had to be prepared long in advance, carved into her mindset until she could rely on it without thinking. She also understood that SEAL grit is not just physical. It is mental endurance, emotional regulation, and a deep commitment to keep going even when the outcome is not guaranteed. Physical pain fades. Mental doubt lingers. She trained her mind to stay steady in uncertainty. Long before facing real missions, she practiced visualizing failure and choosing not to fear it. She pictured everything that could go wrong, accepted it, and focused on the one thing she could control, her response. That inner readiness gave her clarity. It allowed her to stay calm in the storm because she had already faced the storm in her mind. The instructors later saw her grit in action, but she had earned it long before they met her. They saw the results, not the process. They saw a woman who did not break when the water turned violent or when the drills stacked up back to back. They did not see the nights she dragged herself through exhaustion or the mornings when her body protested every step. She had built herself for those moments so completely that by the time the real tests arrived, her grit looked natural. It was not. It was earned through decisions that would have been easy to avoid. Preparation gave her a different presence. She carried herself like someone who understood suffering but did not fear it. That attitude set her apart. Others hesitated when the cold hit. She stepped forward. Others checked the distance left. She focused on the stride in front of her. Others waited to find out if they could endure. She had already answered that question in her training. That certainty created a kind of quiet power. When you know you have done the work, pressure loses its teeth. Her grit also affected the people around her. Without trying, she set a standard. When someone holds themselves to a higher level consistently, it challenges everyone who watches. She was not competing with the team, but her determination made others step up. Real grit is contagious. It raises the room. Her presence reminded others that excuses are choices, and that discomfort is not a reason to stop. She showed them what it looks like to be ready long before the mission demands readiness. SEAL grit shows before the mission starts because missions are not the place to discover who you are. They are the place to prove it. She had already done the hard part. She had become the kind of person who could meet any challenge with steady eyes and a steady mind. By the time the real tests arrived, she was not hoping she had grit. She knew she did, because she had lived it long before anyone asked her to. Respect follows when doubt is shattered. It never arrives at the beginning. It never shows up just because someone carries a title, wears a uniform, or walks in with confidence. Respect is earned in the moment when expectations break. She understood that better than most, because nearly everywhere she went, doubt walked in first. The doubt was quiet but present, sitting in the raised eyebrows, the second glances, the silent assumptions about what she could or could not handle. She did not waste time trying to fight those assumptions with words. She preferred action. Actions make doubt collapse faster than arguments ever could. The officers who watched her were used to reading people in seconds. They believed they could see who was ready and who was pretending. When they looked at her, they saw potential, but they also saw questions. Could she take the hit? Could she stay composed? Could she match the pace, the pressure, the mental grind? They did not ask these things out loud. They did not need to. She felt the weight of those questions without being told. Expectation can cut sharp when people assume your limits before you have the chance to show them otherwise. She carried that weight, not with frustration, but with focus. Doubt is not always an insult. Sometimes it is an opportunity. She treated it that way. When the officers tested her with ice water, they thought they were checking her resilience. In reality, they were stepping straight into the moment she had prepared for. She did not need approval. She did not crave validation. What she wanted was the chance to stand in a situation that would erase every quiet assumption held about her readiness. The second the bucket tipped and the freezing water crashed over her, she knew this was that moment. Her reaction was not a performance. It was instinct built through years of training. But the effect it had on the people watching was immediate. The doubt did not fade slowly. It broke. All it took was 1 second of stillness, one breath held steady, one refusal to flinch. People do not expect that kind of control under sudden shock. They expect hesitation, at least a flicker of discomfort. When none of that appeared on her face, the officers were forced to adjust their understanding of her. Doubt cannot survive unchanged when reality contradicts it so clearly. Respect has a way of shifting the air in a room. It starts subtle, almost invisible, but you can feel it. Their posture changed. Their eyes held her differently. They were no longer evaluating whether she belonged. They were absorbing what she had just shown them. This shift happens only when someone proves they can meet pressure without breaking stride. She had not spoken a word, but she had delivered a message stronger than anything she could have said. She had shown she did not need the room to believe in her before she acted. She acted first, and belief followed. Moments like that reshape team dynamics. When someone demonstrates strength where others expect weakness, the entire group recalibrates. The officers now understood that she was not just capable, but exceptional. Respect grew from the simple fact that she did not react the way they predicted. Prediction is comfortable. Surprise forces recognition. Her composure under harsh conditions told them she had discipline deeper than surface confidence. They realized she brought something uncommon. The ability to stay level even when the situation turned hostile without warning. What impressed them most was not toughness alone. Toughness is common. Many people can grit their teeth and power through discomfort. What she displayed was calm precision. She absorbed the cold without letting it alter her expression or her breathing. That level of control revealed a kind of internal strength that only comes from intense training and deliberate practice. People respect what they cannot easily replicate. They respect what requires sacrifice. She had spent years building the composure they saw in those few seconds. The officers also understood something else in that moment. If she could stay steady under sudden physical shock, she could stay steady in crisis. Decisions made under pressure often determine outcomes far more than force or speed. A person who stays calm when caught off guard is someone who can think clearly when everything is falling apart. That realization pushed respect past the level of polite acknowledgement. It became trust. Trust is the highest form of respect in any high-stakes environment, and she had earned it without saying a word. Respect earned this way lasts. It roots itself in memory because it comes from witnessing something undeniably real. The officers would remember the way the ice water hit her. They would remember the silence that followed. They would remember how they expected her to crumble and how she instead stood stronger than before. That moment became part of her story, not because it was dramatic, but because it exposed the difference between assumption and truth. And once truth replaces doubt, respect arrives on its own. Tough tests reveal tougher mindset. The body reacts first, but the mind decides what happens next. She learned that truth early in her training, where every challenge was designed to expose the point where most people stop. What surprised the instructors was never how far she could run or how long she could hold on. It was the way she approached the breaking point. She did not fear it. She studied it. The tough tests were not obstacles to her. They were windows into who she was becoming and how much further she could push herself. Those tests were meant to drain her, but she treated them as a chance to sharpen her thinking and prove that her strongest muscles were not in her arms or legs, but in her mind. Every tough test came with its own brand of discomfort. Freezing water that seized the lungs. Tasks stacked back to back with no time to breathe. Expectations that kept rising faster than rest could catch up. Many people walk into those moments thinking strength is measured by avoiding the pain. She walked in understanding that facing pain is where the real training begins. It is easy to look strong when things are manageable. The truth appears only when the situation turns hostile. That is why the hardest tests mattered most. They forced her to control her thoughts, not just her actions. She understood the difference between physical exhaustion and mental surrender. Physical exhaustion is temporary. Muscles recover. Breath returns. The burn leaves the body. Mental surrender is far more dangerous, because once the mind accepts defeat, the body follows without argument. Tough tests push both, but only the mind can decide which feeling wins. She trained herself to pause in the moment of discomfort, not to ease it, but to understand it. That pause gave her power. Most people rush to escape pressure. She learned to sit inside it long enough to see that it did not own her. The officers eventually noticed something unusual about her. She did not panic when a drill got harder. She did not rush when pushed. She tightened her focus. The tougher the test, the steadier she became. That steadiness made them curious. They started to realize she had something more than endurance. She had a mindset built through experience, shaped by moments where giving up would have been easier, but never acceptable. Her toughest mindset did not come from ego or bravado. It came from a quiet agreement she had made with herself long before anyone watched. She would not allow temporary pain to dictate long-term potential. This mindset showed up in the smallest details. When cold hit her skin, she breathed deeper instead of tensing. When exhaustion tugged at her posture, she corrected it instead of collapsing. When the instructors tried to wear her down through unpredictability, she responded with consistency. That level of control does not appear in someone who only relies on physical ability. It appears in someone who has confronted their limits often enough to recognize they can move beyond them. Tough tests reveal who is guided by emotion and who is guided by intention. Emotion reacts. Intention responds. She trained herself to respond. Fear told her to pull back. Intention told her to lean in. Frustration told her to slow down. Intention told her to stay steady. Pain told her to stop. Intention told her to finish the task. The more she chose intention over emotion, the tougher her mindset became. It was not about pretending she felt nothing. It was about refusing to let what she felt make her choices. The irony is that many of the toughest tests were designed to break people down. She knew that. The instructors knew that. Yet with her, the opposite happened. The harder the test, the clearer her thinking became. Challenge brought out her best qualities. She was analytical even when exhausted. She was patient even when frustrated. She was precise even when rushed. Those traits made her stand out, not because they looked impressive, but because they remained intact under pressure. Anyone can seem mentally strong when conditions are forgiving. True strength shows only when everything around you is built to catch you slipping. Each time she completed a demanding task, she walked away not with pride, but with proof. Proof that her mind could operate at full capacity even when her body wanted to quit. Proof that discomfort could not distort her decision-making. Proof that she could stay aligned with her goals even when the situation tried to derail her. These moments built her confidence in a way comfort never could. Comfort teaches nothing. Pressure teaches everything. She welcomed that pressure because it showed her exactly where she stood and how much further she could go. Tough tests reveal tougher mindset because they strip away the surface and show what remains underneath. In her case, what remained was clarity, resolve, patience, determination without drama. She did not need to announce her toughness. She lived it through every challenge that tried to break her. And each test, no matter how harsh, became another layer of proof that her strongest weapon was the mindset she carried into every battle. True resilience is silent until challenged. It does not announce itself. It does not walk into a room demanding attention. It waits. It stays steady beneath the surface, steady enough that most people overlook it. She carried that kind of resilience long before anyone recognized it. The officers saw hints of it in her posture and her discipline, but they did not understand the depth of it until the moment pressure pushed hard enough to reveal what she had been building for years. Resilience is always invisible in comfort. It only becomes visible when comfort disappears. Her resilience grew from the small moments she refused to allow weakness to lead. Early mornings when she chose training over sleep. Long runs when every step felt heavier than the last. Quiet frustrations that she pushed through instead of feeding. Every choice added another layer of strength she could rely on later. No one applauded those choices. No one saw them. That is why resilience is silent. It is built in private long before it is needed in public. She understood that preparing herself mentally was as important as sharpening her physical endurance. She worked at both until they became inseparable. Resilience also grows from understanding loss, failure, and struggle without letting any of them define you. She had moments where things did not go her way. She had tasks she failed and drills that pushed her to places she did not expect. Those moments could have chipped away at her confidence. Instead, she used them as measurements. Failure did not shake her identity. It gave her reference points. It showed her where she needed more focus, more discipline, more patience. People often think resilience is about never breaking. She knew better. Resilience is about breaking and rebuilding stronger each time. When the officers tested her, they expected to see a physical reaction. They expected cold to make her fold, even for a second. They were testing toughness, but toughness is loud. Resilience is quiet. It settles into your bones. It anchors your thoughts. When the ice water hit her shoulders, her resilience rose from that quiet place. It made her still and grounded. It kept her breathing slow. It kept her posture straight. Her reaction did not come from bravado. It came from a well of strength that had been filled drop by drop through years of deliberate effort. She understood something many people overlook. Resilience does not mean ignoring pain. It means understanding pain without letting it dictate your actions. When the cold shocked her skin, she felt it. She did not pretend otherwise. But she made a decision before the feeling had the chance to control her. She accepted the shock and let it pass through her instead of resisting it. The officers saw only the surface, the part where she refused to flinch. What they could not see was the internal process she had mastered, the ability to let discomfort move through her without becoming her. That kind of resilience cannot be faked. It shows only when the challenge is real. Anyone can talk about staying strong. Anyone can say they will handle pressure. Actual resilience is proven only in the moment when everything inside you wants to retreat, but you choose not to. She made that choice without hesitation. The officers recognized it immediately. They might not have put it into words, but something in their expression shifted. Respect often comes when resilience becomes undeniable. Her silence in that moment also mattered. She did not explain how she held herself together. She did not brag afterward. She did not make it a story about beating the cold or surprising the officers. She let the moment speak for itself. Resilience, when real, does not need narration. People can feel it. They can sense when someone has been through enough hard moments to stay grounded when most others would panic. Her calm response communicated that history more clearly than any speech could. Resilience also influenced how she viewed future challenges. After moments like that, she did not walk away inflated with pride. She walked away with confirmation. Confirmation that her training worked. Confirmation that struggle had shaped her instead of weakening her. Confirmation that she could rely on her instincts even when surprised. Each test reinforced her sense of control, not because she wanted to prove anything to others, but because she wanted to know she could trust herself. People sometimes misunderstand resilience as something dramatic, something that shows up in grand, heroic displays. But the strongest resilience tends to reveal itself in quiet reactions, a steady breath, a controlled posture, a mind that refuses to spin out even when pushed. She embodied that kind of quiet strength. The officers witnessed it in real time. They saw how pressure hit her and how she absorbed it without losing her center. That is the moment when resilience stops being theoretical and becomes undeniable. True resilience is silent until challenged because it does not exist for show. It exists for survival, for clarity, for purpose. She had built hers patiently, consistently, and intentionally. And when the cold hit, that inner strength rose without noise or hesitation, showing everyone around her the truth of who she was beneath the surface.